Good morning.
G'day, everybody. The technical stress is real. The technical stress is real.
I'm the rabbit caught in the headlights at this point.
Yeah.
So I've sat there intently going, is it working? But it's working. Hi, everybody. Hope you've had a good week. Okay, I guess we should introduce ourselves every week in case people are new. Yeah, this is Paul. I'm Cyan. We work with the beings from the Zeta Reticulum, and you can read more about us, what we do, our contact, etc. on our website, which is in the show information down the bottom somewhere. If you click down there. No, there.
There, wherever that is, yeah.
We like to give the Zeta perspective on all manner of ET-related subjects, and today we are going to be focusing on questions that we've received from experiencers about contact, the whys of contact. I guess a good place to start would be just a very quick explanation.
We'll definitely do
about
that.
Point of origin.
Yep, absolutely.
Do you want to do that now? But we are going to be joined by some people in just a moment.
Yeah.
But do you want to bring them on now? Or
Bring them on.
Okay.
Bring them on.
So we are going to bring on Oak. Look at these skills I've got going on here.
Look at these skills. Yeah, this is awesome.
And here comes Garrett.
Hey, Garrett. Oak.
There's Chris.
Awesome. Hey guys, it's all happened.
Yeah, you have to unmute yourselves. It looks like it mutes you automatically if you didn't already do it. Look at that.
Hey guys.
Hi guys.
Do you like my skills? All right. So I think we should start with the first common question we get is why we get asked is why me? Why am I being contacted?
Yeah.
Why am I being abducted by aliens? Why is this happening to me?
Yeah. Generally, that's to do with where a person's point of origin is. And so if a person's having any type of contact, whether it's experiencer, contact, abductee, it's based around where that person's point of origin is.
Yeah.
You'll notice that there's a lot of people that go, I've never seen anything, even a spirit. I have no activity in my house, nothing happens.
Yeah.
Those people generally are from spirit realm. They are not hybrids. And after speaking to hundreds and hundreds of people, I mean, it's just a conclusion that I've come to, and it's just an opinion, but I haven't yet found someone that's just from spirit realm and they've got ET contact. It just hasn't happened.
Yeah, the Zetas generally make it quite clear that contact is because you're being visited by your own race, which brings us into, well, how is that possible, and the whole hybrid human thing that you've just mentioned. So maybe do you want to just explain the basics of that for people that maybe haven't heard that explanation
you
before?
could do.
Me?
Yeah, come on.
Oh, I'm busy being tech person.
I'll drink tea.
I'm just saying good morning to people who are saying hello to us. Pam, Claire, hey, Katie. Doug, hey. Okay, so the whole hybrid human thing. So this is the way the Zetas do it. The beings from Zeta Reticuli. This is the way they do it. It's all based on the free will of a spirit realm being, and all races abide by the free will of any race, apart from the ones that don't, but they're not involved in this process. So, and that's a really bad way to explain it, but basically what happens is...
Oh, I'm listening to you.
You're laughing. Okay, so what happens is the race, they contact the higher self being of the person about to be born. There's an agreement, and on birth of the human baby, the consciousness of the ET being blends, if you like, with the consciousness of the spirit person who forms the human, and they live in a symbiotic relationship for the duration of the existence of the human container, the body. On the death of the physical body, the spirit realm component goes back to spirit realm, and the consciousness of the ET being goes back to its own race. I got there in the end.
Absolutely. I mean, that was the...
It's first thing in the morning. Come on.
We need more tea. That's all.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll start rolling with these questions, hey?
Yeah.
All right.
I can dive in with a question if you guys like.
Firstly, would you like to say where you're from, like which group you're from?
Yeah,
a group?
so I'm from Ireland myself. Hello, everybody, and I've been kind of running multiple support groups for experiencers for the past year, both publicly on Reddit, just by having a public subreddit called Experiencers, along with some people. We run it to have a place for people to share stories and so on, and we also run a private Discord to provide a kind of a support and social hub for experiencers that we call the Experiencer Network. And myself and the guys are part of that community, and you guys as well. And and we talk to experiencers and just put our heads together and try and figure these things out, and just be there for each other, and so that we know this. Yeah. So I mean, I talk to a lot of experiencers. So I could throw some questions that come up a lot in our discussions. For example, I mean, a lot of people tend to wonder if why is it that when they have ET contact, do they seem to have a lot of paranormal activity along with that? Like the phenomenon comes around with it, and it stays in the house seemingly. So it's something that comes up a lot.
So we get this question. We had it yesterday actually. Somebody was talking to us and saying, "This is what's going on. Why is it that this is going on in my house? It was never happening before. Now it's happening, or it's always been happening," and these sorts of things. What we've noticed is that the phenomenon exists with the extraterrestrials. Doesn't matter what race they are, and some of the phenomenon is more powerful with extraterrestrials than other races. That's the other thing. And so when say they come into the house, right, but you can only see a distortion. What also comes with them is a distortion of the fabric of reality. And then you may start to see small flashing lights at your peripheral vision, or see things that are going on around the house, and you're wondering what's going on. And as I've said to a lot of people, don't be sort of focused too much on the phenomenon, what's going on. Try and look behind what's actually going on in the house, because the phenomenon is just a byproduct of them being in the house. That's the other thing. It's like, I'll give you an example. Somebody puts on perfume and then walks through the house. They're alive, and you go, "Oh, that smells really nice." Well, that would be classed as the phenomenon, the smell of the perfume, the scent. But the actual person that's got the perfume on is not being recognized because you're just acknowledging the perfume. You see what I mean? That's the same as the phenomenon for ET as well.
Do you have any?
Hang on, I'm poking him on this a bit further. But why does that increase? Why does that phenomena increase because of the ET contact?
I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I believe it's because of the frequency. The frequency of the ET contact kind of magnifies just for a few days after they've been around. It magnifies the energy in the house. If there was spirit activity in the house, it's going to make that appear more dramatic, stronger, in whatever way that it was being experienced before. If it was, it's going to seemingly increase for a few days after contact.
So the thing is with spirit people is that they need energy to perform any type of manifestation. Now, if there's no extraterrestrial movement or contact in the house, then the spirit people are reliant on either EMF from electrical devices and fields, or they're reliant on energy from the people in the house. Yeah. But of course, once the extraterrestrials step in, there's a massive expansion in the energy in the house. That means that the spirit people then have the capacity to actually produce more phenomenon. But the thing is, we need to remember that quite often phenomenon isn't related to spirit people. It's also related to the actual person themselves, like poltergeist activity. And so as the person's etheric body is expanding, the the phenomenon in the house will also expand. So now you've got this multifaceted issue where you don't know whether it's the ET, you don't know whether it's the spirit people, and you don't know whether it's you. And you need to go about collecting levels of evidence. How do I feel? What's going on around me? What time did it start? And documenting everything so that you know you're trying to play detective in your own life to work out what's going on. If you don't do it, you'll never know what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, I was going to basically ask, how does somebody differentiate, an experiencer differentiate between what is the phenomenon and what is ET activity? Because for a lot of new experiencers, it's all brand new, and the whole thing is quite intense. And so
that is a very good question, because the opposite applies with spirit people. Say there's no ET in the house whatsoever, but there's just spirit people. We had some people talking to us yesterday, and they were saying, a shoe came flying across the room, just off the shelf, just straight across the room. And but there was nothing else going on in the house. And then a couple of weeks later, something else happened. You see, those sorts of things are either now, so we've reduced the category, and it could be that we're frozen.
I don't know.
Yes, we have.
You're grand on my end anyway, guys.
Okay.
Keep talking.
Okay, so we're fine.
Yeah, our screen's completely frozen.
Our screen's completely frozen.
Well, that's okay. We'll keep going. They can hear us.
All right. So it could be that it's either the phenomenon or it could be spirit. That's not ET.
So how would
there's often... Oh, sorry.
Keep going.
How would you rule any of those out? You know, for example, if you have all sorts of stuff going on, poltergeist activity, you know, maybe you're seeing the lights, like you said, or let's say you have an orb just fly through your house. You know, maybe you see flashing lights in the sky when you look up at the stars. How do you start eliminating certain categories to try to really pin down what's going on?
This is where it becomes a very interesting process. So you'll need to document everything and then try and categorize it. No one can say it's this, it's that, it's this, it's that, because there's too much random occurrence in energy. That's the problem. All right. So we need to make sure that we document everything.
So is there any like activity that's more typical of spirit or more typical of ET? So you could try to make those conclusions.
So what do you think?
I would suggest that from the discussions that we've had with the Zeta in particular, that they're really not interested in human objects moving things around the house, you know, plates falling off walls and things like that. So if somebody was describing to me a series of phenomena that included kind of typical poltergeist activity, you know, picture frames coming off the wall, obviously things with no other rational logical explanation, I would suggest that that is much more likely to either be a spirit activity, or it could be the person who it's occurring around is carrying a lot of energy and could be an undeveloped medium, or could have undeveloped psychic or other types of abilities. In those instances, you then have to kind of look at a person and say, well, does this activity happen to you outside the house? Does it happen in other people's houses, or is it only in your own house? You know, so you would have to go through a step-by-step almost elimination process, looking at what's going on with the person in their own property and other people's properties. Do other people experience the phenomena with them, or is it something they're only experiencing when they're by themselves?
What about something in terms of like an orb in the sky that's behaving kind of like a plane, but then has like non-plane-like characteristics? Could that still be something from spirit realm?
Orbs are interesting, aren't they? I mean, orbs are traditionally associated with spirit people. You'd speak to anyone that's been in a séance, physical, especially a physical mediumship séance, where ectoplasm's being used. They will often describe seeing balls of light, orbs, you know, little flashes of light all around the room, all around the medium, around the people sitting and witnessing. When we see those orbs outside and up in the sky, of course, you know, you kind of it kind of lends itself more to the ET phenomena. But I think something that was interesting that came up recently in discussions with the Zeta was the fact that the orb phenomena could actually be an acknowledgement of what were they saying? The earth energies themselves reflecting in consciousness.
Yes, it can be that, yeah.
And so, you know, I'd suggest maybe if somebody was seeing orbs on demand all the time outside in the sky, then you'd have to kind of wonder if that was maybe more than, you know, that was more related to the person and their relationship with, I don't know, the fabric of the Earth's consciousness or the Earth's energies, more so than an extraterrestrial initiated contact. Right. I mean, there are craft up there, we know there are, but are they up there waiting and watching for us to at the front door and say hello every morning? I doubt it, but yeah, you know, common sense I think would dictate they probably weren't. Yeah.
I'm curious on I have a few experiences that would have children, and that seems to be a lot of phenomenal activity around their children. Like, do you guys have any opinions or thoughts on, you know, do the children kind of create contact, generate contact, or what's going on there? Why?
Well, to me, it would be that it would depend on what was taking place on the generational line. So if contact was occurring because your parents were contacted, then you're contacted. Once a child then comes into the generational line, quite often the contact then occurs at that level as well.
Mm. So it could see an increase in activity in the house.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. But you know, you also can see, you know, as kids hit their teens and the energy gets higher and higher in the house, you know, you can often see an increase in kind of poltergeist activity around the house. You know, house of girls. Yeah, moving to the shed time.
Does contact ever skip generations? Maybe like a grandfather and then, you know, a son or daughter? Skip the parents, or is it every?
It can, but what I've noticed is that sometimes people think that they're not being contacted generationally, and basically they're in denial, and because they're in denial, the screen memories are so strong for that person that they would say, no, I've never been contacted.
Yeah. I'm just going to say we're having technical issues that have got nothing to do with me at this point. So you guys are like completely frozen for us, and my screen keeps going blank, which is very disconcerting. But we can still hear you. So if we're looking a bit blank, we apologize.
It looks like y'all have frozen to us, but everyone else seems to still be moving.
Yeah, but we can hear you. So
yeah, we can hear you fine.
There's a question that popped up on the screen, guys. I can read that out for you, if that helps.
Yeah, I just put that up and it hasn't happened. Can we be a little bit more specific to the Earth consciousness, Earth energies? Yeah. Can I pan that one to you?
Well, generally there's a lot of type of ley lines, energy, portals, those sorts of things that exist, and we've noticed that depending on where those energies are, that will then also create phenomenon as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, the planet as a whole is considered as an entity in its own right, isn't it? By the Zetas. Yeah, and so, you know, and it has consciousness just as everything else does, and Yeah, I mean, I think you were commenting to somebody recently about, you know, maybe not being too sure about what orbs were being in the sky, but it could well be this acknowledgement of the Earth consciousness to that person, sort of, you know, putting it out there to see something, and, you know, regardless of whether it's an ET contact, a brief contact, or it's the consciousness of the planet or some other reflection of consciousness, it's still amazing that it's happened, you know.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
So regarding generational contact, is it often the same race contacting throughout the generations, or can it be different ones?
That's a really interesting question. So we've seen that generally there's people being contacted by one prime race, one prime race. And then depending on who that race is, will depend on whether other races that are not sub-races, as in not as good, but different sub-races will also interact with that person as well.
Yeah.
We've had contact with multiple races, although the primary race is the Zeta race. So, you know, I would suggest that it's not just one race that people can go, oh, it's always this race. It's not that way at all. I mean, it could be, but I've not seen it. I've not experienced it myself. So, you know, we've had the Zetas. We've had at least 3 different races from the Zetas. We've had the Anunnaki, which has been awesome. And it's awesome with the Zetas as well. We've had
Avians.
the Avians, the Arcturians, the Alpha Centauri type entities, the collectors, trillions. I mean, it just is a lot of races. It's a lot of races.
But from a hybrid point of view, from that symbiotic relationship, it's generally, as far as I'm aware and as far as I understand, the same race that incarnates into the human form on the generational lineage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So to follow up.
So if I did a point of origin and found out what race I was, and then my mother did the same one, they would likely be from the same race. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I had a question also about generational contact, but there's some people who say that people who've had association with aerospace engineering, or family members have had association with aerospace engineering or intelligence or military, are more likely to experience contact events. Is there anything to that? Sometimes it happens generationally, like it may not be this generation, but the next generation.
Interesting that you've just said that, because somebody spoke to us the other day who was part of one of the projects in the past.
Yeah.
And they then started to get contact after they were part of a project.
One of the big ones.
Yeah. And so it would be as if and this would be the thing, you've never had any contact, and then you come to this house and start talking to us, you can then actually get contact.
Do you think they picked it up maybe at their job and they brought it home?
But it's not the hitchhiker effect or anything like that. It's just that, you know, you've got to understand that the Zetas and other beings are very, very inquisitive, and they like to observe. And if they get a chance to work with somebody from a different, you know, perspective, different aspect, then they're going to do that.
Yeah.
It's just like you walking along the road and suddenly you see a bird and you stop and look at it. You know, you're observing it, and then you see a butterfly further on down. You're going to observe the things that are going on around you.
Yeah, we generally find that if we're working with people, especially on longer term projects, that they have an increased level of activity around them.
Yeah.
I suppose just on the context of again, like, you know, the phenomenon and during things that experiencers encounter in their house when dealing with ET contact, a lot of experiencers report knocking, things like knocking on walls and objects. why do you think that might be going on? Is that a communication or just a side effect of contact?
Well, the Fox sisters were the first, or was it the Bang sisters?
With the tapping?
With the tapping, yeah. Who was it?
Bang sisters are known for their precipitation mediumship.
Oh, okay, so it was the Fox, was it? But anyway, in the beginning, it was very common for spirit people to knock.
Yeah.
And people to interact with spirit people via knocking as well, doing table sittings, those sorts of things.
Yeah.
But what we've noticed is with the knocking is that it's generally a release in energy. So we've had that happen in here. We had a medium, and the knocking went from one part of the roof all the way through to the other, and that was the medium as they were building the energy with the spirit people, that the energy was releasing, and it's like it was knocking on the roof.
I've heard spectacular knocking for exactly those reasons, and it's across the floor, it's up around the room. It's like the knocking has a life of its own, and I don't know, maybe the spirit people. This was in a seance. Maybe the spirit people were using it as a, I don't know, as a fun thing to do. But you could tell it definitely came from the energetic build-up at the start of the sitting. I mean, knocking is one of these things that can be so many different things. It can be the undeveloped medium who's like a battery ready to go poof, because they haven't developed, and it affects everything around them. And a person might hear what sounds like little stones being thrown at their window all night long, and there's absolutely no way it could be. They might, as they sit in meditation, or as a person sits in meditation, they might hear cracking or popping on the walls around them, or wooden objects. And sometimes it can be actual communication, conscious communication from a spirit person. One knock for yes, two knocks for no, and this, you can ask questions and get a clear response from a spirit person. So it can be so many different things. You have to sit back, take each case on an individual basis, and look at what's going on with that person. What do they do? What happens around them? And you can gradually start to work these things out.
Generally, ETs wouldn't be behind knocking.
No, not really. But the phenomenon is, this is once again, so
the energetic
the energetic build-up of the fabric of the room could mean that to release the energy in the room could mean that you would hear knocking. And so once again, the diagnostics that you would need to do on that is how is the person feeling? Is there a lot of energy? Have they just come from an argument with somebody? And of course, now we have knocking. Has the person started to develop as a medium and has now got access to spirit people? Is the energy building in the room? Is there a possum outside knocking on the window? You've got to do diagnostics. If you don't do it, because I think this is the problem. It would be lovely if we could go, it's just that. Well, we can't do that. The only way we can actually do it is with screen memories, because screen memories are much easier to identify than live ongoing phenomenon.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Why is that?
Sorry, why are
screen memories?
Why are screen memories easier to identify?
Because someone could say, I'm walking down the road or driving down the road, and it was 10 minutes to get there and 5 hours have gone. And you go, well, that's a type A screen memory. Yeah.
Provided there was no other logical explanation,
But, or I all of a sudden I remembered that I'd been on craft 20 years ago, type C screen memory. Oh, the other one, I was on craft and they were training me to fly the craft, type B narrative. It's you see what I mean? You can just ping these screen memories that way. And most people have complex layers of screen memories as well. And that's to do with people's ability or inability to be able to cognitively understand what's going on and hold their space while this is happening as well. Okay.
So just a lot of experiences I would find that I would talk to that who maybe might be getting more kind of subtle or abstract kind of contact cases, like for example, communications and dreams and such. Often they will go and seek out a psychic in order to get more information about who and what is contacting them. Do you guys have any thoughts on this as something? Because a lot of this is something a lot of experiences will end up doing, I find.
Yeah. Generally, the first port of call for a person when they've got something going on is they go see a psychic, and that's okay, because people have to start somewhere, right? But what psychics do is the psychics generally read the energy of the etheric body and all of the information that's associated with that. And so if a person's dreaming that they've had contact, it's part of the fabric. And when a psychic reads that, the psychic will go, oh yeah, they're getting contact. But the difference is they won't know whether the contact was real or not, because they're only reading the information in the etheric body.
Yeah.
Whereas to do a diagnostic of whether someone's actually having contact, you've got to build evidence for that person, and they need to build their own evidence as well. Yeah. One dream of contact, it may not necessarily even be contact. It may actually be that you either dreamt of contact or were in the astral and reliving somebody else's contact.
Yep. And that can be just as a profound experience as a genuine contact experience in its own right. It can have just the same side effects and, take days to resolve.
Oh, sure, absolutely. Because you've got the emotional content that's sort of the catalyst from that dream.
Or astral experience.
Well, from the astral experience.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff for sure.
But a psychic can, just as you with psychometry, when you read the energy of an object, the object, the field of the object carries with it its who made it, where it's been, and who's owned it, etc., etc. A good psychic can pick up on all that information from the object. It's no different to a person. A person carries with them their experiences, their dreams, their thoughts. A good psychic can pick up on that. I mean, we've seen it to the extent that somebody was able to, recall somebody's dream, with acute detail. Acute detail.
Yeah.
Could a psychic pick up on something like an etheric implant in someone?
No.
They would need to have a relationship with a ET to do that.
Yeah. No, that's not possible. I know that probably people would go, that's wrong. But we've seen plenty of people try to pick up implants from extraterrestrials. Those implants these days, they're quite technical, and they're able to basically hide within the etheric body. We've also seen that spirit people will look at a person's etheric body and not see in any way the etheric technology, and then next thing you know, you maybe bring through an ET being, and there it is sitting in front of you, and you couldn't even see it.
Yep. Most spirit people, if not all of them, can't see extraterrestrials. I mean, that's the other misnomer. You have people sort of saying, oh, I've got a spirit person talking to an ET and la la la. But it can't happen because of the frequency difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like we always go back to the radio analogy. The spirit's AM and the ET's FM. Everything exists, but you can only listen to AM or FM or long wave. You can't listen to them all three channels at the same time on the same radio.
Yeah.
Actually, on that note, a friend of mine is fascinated by ultra-terrestrials, as in like non-human intelligence that exists on our Earth, that are part of Earth. So not necessarily spirits, but you could say the Fae and things like that. I mean, do ETs interact with these entities that are on this plane as well, or are they only interested in humans?
I would suggest that you would probably have more of an interaction with the shamanic spirits. The shamanic spirits would more so interact with those entities, rather than ET. ET would see them as a phenomenon and ignore them, just as if you see phenomenon and you ignore it. Whereas shamanic spirits, we work with them quite heavily, they love to interact with them. They love to go into the different realms, lower, middle, and upper realms. And in doing so, when you journey with those spirit people, those shamanic guides, they actually do often stop and talk to all of the different nuances of the ultra-terrestrials. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
On that note, can interaction with spirits lead to ET contact or interaction?
No. No, they're two different, as Simon was saying, they're two different bands, two different frequencies. Generally, if you're working with spirit people, you're on one end of a scale. If you're working with ET people, you're on the other end. It doesn't mean they're better or worse. It's a completely different energy. And so for us to actually be able to work with spirits and ET, we have to work with spirits one day and then ET the next day, because we have to shift the frequency of the house to allow those different beings to be able to come.
Yeah, and and if it's the other way around, we've been working heavily with the Zeta for a good few weeks, and then we try to work with spirit people. We have to leave a much longer gap because the frequency's up here somewhere. We've got to let it settle.
The residual stuff, yeah.
So I wanted to ask about ET contact. Say, is there a difference between ET contact now and ET contact in the past? Like you hear these accounts of things like George Adamski's encounter where he's driving down the street and he meets two ETs dressed like gentlemen in a coffee shop, and they invite him back to his craft, and it's all very like friendly and everything. And there's a number of encounters like that where people encounter things that they don't report encountering today. Is there a difference in the modality of contact between present day and say 1950s, 60s, 40s?
Oh, absolutely. It's so different. It's bizarre. So years ago, of course, when I was contacted, it was overt, the contact.
Yep.
I mean, it was just so overt. And it was much more because there was no internet, there was no technology, there was no real way to find out information about them. So they were able to travel around quite freely. Whereas these days, everything's, you've got phones, you can take pictures of things, you can record them while you're talking to them. The plausible deniability from their point of view is that they have not disclosed, not exist yet. They are showing certain amounts of information about themselves. And it would be the same as if you had gone off-world yourself and were working on another planet. You want to stay as innocuous as possible.
In terms of the actual contact experiences themselves, you hear very few stories like current day of the types of contact even that you've experienced back in the day. You hear very little about, I mean, the Ariel school, when was that, 94, 97? I can't remember.
94.
But, that was probably, I mean, I don't know how many, because I'm really not any, I don't go out there looking for all the information really, but you just don't hear of these big craft landings in current day. You don't hear people talking about, I looked outside and there was a craft outside my window. They might report seeing an orb, or they might report seeing some sort of strange helicopter, but you very rarely hear about them saying, and there was a craft 10 foot outside my window, and we've spoken to the Zeta about why there aren't these such dramatic style contacts like the Travis Walton style contacts, and the Rendlesham type contacts, these really big contact experiences. And they, I think the general consensus is back in those days, not that it was that long ago, but they didn't, when they first started coming to visit this planet in the overt way that they did, they didn't realize the effect on the human physical body they would have. And, you know, that's why, especially with these early cases, people got very badly burnt, or that, you know, they were suffered mental, you know, afterwards because of what occurred to them. And they're keen not to do that to people anymore. They know now.
But we need to remember that Gary Nolan's been doing that study with the pilots.
Yeah, when
and the pilots become psychologically unwell. They've also become burnt by the technology.
Yeah.
And we had a major craft landing 10 years ago.
But they kept the craft back. And they would have, you know, they kept the craft back.
Well, that was because it was organised.
Yeah. So, you know, when they do put a craft down now, that, you know, you hear about the domes, and, you know, especially with the aero school, they all stayed within the dome, the beings, didn't they? They didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't
Look, there's
outside.
a lot more to this. It's we would have to do a show for another 2 hours to talk about this. But there is a question from Laura that says, I wonder if ET are spirits, and when they pass. No, ET aren't spirits at all. It's, they've got their own.
No. If ET have spirits.
Yeah, and that's
not
when they well, isn't that the same?
No. So I'm Laura. I'm guessing, but you're talking about
they have spirits.
Like have spirits, as in humans have spirits. Yeah, and when do they pass it as?
And I was answering that. Okay. So no, they don't. Because they're hot. It depends on the race as well. If you're talking about the Anunnaki, then yes. If you're talking about the Zetas, then no. The consciousness and how the consciousnesses move from one container to the other.
Oh, look, there were 2 questions. Oh, I got okay. Now I understand why I got confused. We had a blip. So the first question was, are ET spirits? And then the second blip was, do they have spirits?
Okay.
It's not me going completely bananas.
And to be honest, our screen,
it's terrible.
It keeps freezing, so it would be 5 minutes of frozen screen each time, and maybe a 60-second gap where we can see ourselves. So it's quite an interesting situation.
Terry says, the ET do have souls, of course. They're in the Akashic record. Well, it depends what race you're talking about. You know, when we're talking about extraterrestrials, you have to remember that there are goodness knows how many races. And just with the, is it 6 or 7 races we've had contact with, each race is different. Each has different death processes.
I guess it comes down to what is the definition of a soul? Because if a soul is related to a human concept, then you could say that all consciousness is a soul. And if you say that, then yes, Terry, I would suggest that that's right. But the thing is if we don't look at, say, the Zetas as a human concept and look at the way that their consciousness exists within the container, when they move their consciousness across from one to the other, they're not required to go into any type of spirit realm.
They don't have an afterlife process. They don't have a spirit realm or a heaven, as you know, as you'd get with humans. The Anunnaki do.
Yeah.
The Anunnaki do have their own spirit realm. In fact, it's what the human spirit realm is based upon.
Whereas a trillion, no, absolutely not. Nothing. They don't. Collectors, no, absolutely not. So, we have to be really careful that we don't say ET and then make every single ET abide to that process, because that's never going to happen. Yeah. Considering there's something like 200 million galaxies, the possibility for each race to exist in one of those galaxies is astounding.
But I'll just say things about spirit realm and afterlife and ET and all of that. But in the human spirit realm, there are no extraterrestrials.
Yeah.
They can't. Their frequency is too high. They can't be in there in any capacity.
Here's a question that I was given the other day. Someone said to me, when ET come into the house, sometimes there's a distortion or they look watery. Why is that? Well, the Zetas have said that they can project their consciousness into the house, and then they use what's called a fine matter process to cause their consciousness to draw to them particles, and in doing so, it creates a distortion in the fabric of the room. And so it looks like there's something moving through the room or something watery, but you can see straight through it.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to acknowledge that question. Yeah.
Do they do that on purpose so we can know that they're there? Or is this just like a byproduct of their consciousness being around?
Well, no, they consciously extend themselves, but if they're not going to physically get in a craft, come here, and then come into the house or anyone's house, they can also work via consciousness and by populating their etheric form or their conscious form with matter, and that way they can actually interact on a three-dimensional level with the physical as well.
Mm.
And this is why it's so hard to actually pin down what's going on with somebody, because it's not either one thing or the other, or it can be multiple ways that a person is being contacted, and or ways that the ET are visiting a person as well.
Yeah, I remember asking them about that and was told there are many, many different ways to be visited.
Yeah.
There's no standard black and white answer.
Yeah.
And of course, depending on the race, they'll have different ways of interacting as well. So that's not it's never standard across the board.
I have a bit of a little rant about that, if you don't, in terms of a question, if you don't mind me diving in.
Okay. Yeah.
So, like, a lot of us experiences would often be, receiving kind of various types of contact, often abstract or spooky. We want to reduce our fear, and we would like to have an interaction with an ET. And we kind of find that if somehow or other we were able to ask an ET to visit us, and the ET did want to visit us, it wouldn't necessarily show up at our door at 3 p.m. and come in and sit down for a chat. It will show up at 3 a.m. while we're asleep. And it will sneak around the house, and it will peek around corners, or peek into windows, or crouch at the end of your bed and run along the rooftop and do all this kind of stuff. And then we'll complain later on that humans are too afraid for contact, And it's kind of like, what's going on there? Do they understand the effect they're having on us there, or is that just like, do they not have social skills? So I'm
just going to answer that by saying, let's imagine that you go to another planet, but you haven't disclosed your race to that planet. Now, there are hybrids on that planet that you wish to visit. The last thing that you'll be doing is turning up during the day, unless there are exceptional circumstances, and disclosing your presence. But you will turn up at 3 a.m. in the morning
when they're asleep,
under the cloak of night, when everybody's asleep, when technology is at its minimal usage across the planet, because the capacity for you to turn up then is a lot better. But now the person who introduced the ET has to work out, this person's never had contact before. What's going to happen to their psychological structure when I walk into the room, knowing that the fabric of reality is going to shift? You do not want to harm the person's psychological structure in any way. And we do know from countless contacts that people do have residual problems after contact, psychological problems, PTSD for years and years and years. So the potential for damage that you could cause is extreme. Knowing that and having that information, you may decide to turn up in a way that you provide the minimal amount of damage to somebody psychologically.
From the experience perspective, that mode of operation seems to almost increase the trauma of the whole visit. I know they're trying to be delicate, but I guess just being human, the fact that we're asleep in bed at night, that is our most vulnerable time.
It definitely is traumatic, but the thing is, if we look at it from the opposite point of view, that you could be somehow irradiated and then physically made unwell for the rest of your life, they have to weigh up that contact in regards to what is the minimal amount of damage that can be done during the contact as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of issues why people go, oh, we want disclosure. Yeah, okay, we'll all have disclosure, but don't think that you'll be able to go and walk around a craft and, like at a sideshow and have a look at all the stuff, you won't even be able to go into these craft. It just won't happen. Francesca says,
there was a question.
Do you consider dreams part of spirit realm? I consider dreams to be part of a person's consciousness.
Yeah.
That's basically that I've got for that.
I can't change the.
Would the Zetas make first contact by offering an item to initiate a conversation? For example, showing a telephone or a key if not able to communicate telepathically. They definitely can do that, but there are races that do that knowing that humans like technology.
Don't look at me like that.
And so
yeah,
they will come offering, and this is not the Zetas, but other races. And then once the person has accepted that technology, it actually becomes embedded in the body.
Yeah.
Which is a real issue.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that if any race comes and offers you any technology, do not, under any circumstances, accept it.
Even if it doesn't look like technology.
I guess you're hosting now, Gareth. Go on.
You want to just keep going through the questions?
Yeah,
I mean, we can answer them.
Well, we'll just discuss. I mean, what do you think of the? Oh, they're back.
Welcome back.
Are we back?
You're back.
We can hear you.
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, we can see you.
Welcome back, guys.
Welcome back.
Oh, this is terrible.
What were you guys joking?
Well, I think
we were joking about who was going to host the show.
Anyone at this point, it's just no problem.
Yeah. What was I going to say?
We were talking about. Did you hear us talking about accepting technology from being?
Yeah, we heard all. We only lost you for a second or two.
Even if it doesn't look like technology, don't accept it.
Yeah, look, I was tested by the Zetas that I was working with. I've been working with them for a number of years, and they've been showing me the person the Zeta being I should be communicating with, and they had an expectation that I should be able to sufficiently recognize who they are, and black and white, I should know who they are, and I shouldn't be talking to anybody else for my own safety. So what they did is they kind of set up a controlled situation, and basically one of the abductors turned up, and the thing is, they all look very, very, very similar. They all look very similar, and what they did is, it's very interesting. They showed me like flash images of multiple different grey looking beings. There are 63 races to the grey species, and some of them look almost identical, some of them look different, some of them look super different, but some of them look really same. Anyway, the abductors do look kind of similar if you don't know the particular Zeta being that I was working with. They do look sort of similar if you don't know them that well. Anyway, so this abductor turns up, and he's in front of me, and he had absolutely zero emotion, absolutely nothing, blank, nothing positive, nothing negative. It was just blank. And he outstretched his arm, his hand, and in his fingers, long fingers, he was holding a little square plaque. It looked like a little, imagine like a computer chip, like, imagine a computer chip about an inch long, in length width, and he just showed it to me, and me being inquisitive went, "Oh, that looks interesting. I wonder what that is." And I didn't physically take it, but in my mind, of course, I'm inquisitive about it, and I want to see what it is. Now, in accepting that, in that thing from this being, it then got embedded into my etheric field, and they had to come and get me a few days later to remove it, which is another experience.
So she had to be taken on board a craft and actually have it removed that way as well.
And that wasn't an easy experience either.
Interestingly, I often think that people look at us and go, oh, those guys, they just, they've got all these experiences, everything's sort of happy,
Oh, it's hard work.
It's hard work, okay? Yeah. If you want proper, clear contact, you're going to be tested. Yeah. You're going to make mistakes. This is the other thing. Yeah. You're going to stuff up, and you're going to end up in trouble, and you're going to have to work out how to get out of it. And that's normal. If you're prepared to do that, then go for gold.
Yeah.
So how do you just say no to an ET then? If just
say no.
You just say no, like, I don't trust you, no. Just
simple. You just cut the communication off.
You build relationship with them through stillness and meditation on your terms. As they come in, then you know that you are in control. If you're just walking around and suddenly an ET turns up at 3 o'clock in the morning and tries to hand you something, seriously, walk away.
Yeah.
Just walk away.
And it literally might look like nothing. It might just look like nothing, or it could be like an amazing crystal looking object. It could be incredible. You know, if you just don't take it. the ET beings with your best interests at heart, they work in consciousness, and they know that, as we all should know, we have everything within us to do what we need to do with the right training.
That's all been answered. We're just looking at the answer to the questions down the
side. Just all suddenly popped up.
Since our web browser crashed, it's all turned up okay now. So, do the Zetas have any pets? No, the Zetas have no pets. Not one pet, because from their perspective, an animal, plant has free will, and they would never ever have a pet.
No, that would seem they would have an equal, in their eyes, if they were going to have a
equal relationship.
They'd have an equal relationship. Yeah, they don't do pets.
Yeah, they don't.
Are they capable of pack bonding like humans are? I'm not sure what that means. Pack bonding like humans, but they feel incredible love for each other. You know?
Lynn's in the show. Hello, Lynn.
Oh yeah, look at that, and David Hurley as well.
And David, hey David,
how's it going? Thanks for your music, by the way, on the promo.
Everybody.
But what's I going to say? I mean, you know, when you're aware of how they feel about their own, you know, you really sense that love from them. So don't think that, you know, these beings aren't capable of experiencing emotion that we can understand. They are. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just this particular one I was talking about that came and offered me something or other. There was nothing. I didn't, you know, they weren't supposed to be with me. Yeah. Anyway.
And look, okay, so people might go, well, you know, how did you develop? I didn't have anybody to talk to. There was no way that I could discuss this with anybody 50 years ago, 40 years ago, whatever. It just wasn't on anybody's radar. So what I did was just meditated every day and got to the point where I was able to start to understand some of the phenomenon. That was the first thing. And then I realized that the phenomenon was just the woo. It was the rabbit hole, and I wasn't going to go down it anymore. Then I started to think about, well, how do I look behind the phenomenon and see what's generating this? I did that. And then unfortunately, I started to step into places that I shouldn't have stepped into. So I was now trying to astral travel to extraterrestrials. And in doing so, I would completely miss the point that that's not where the extraterrestrials are.
Yeah.
I'd go into spirit realm looking for ET. They weren't there either. And so I was reducing the amount of places that I was going to be going to find extraterrestrial races. I started to do lucid dreaming and looking into my dream states looking for extraterrestrials. That's not where they were either, right? And by reducing the amount of places I could look, I started to realize that the only way that I was going to contact extraterrestrials and evidence them was through heterodyning. Now, heterodyning, as I've explained in my books, the Zeta interviews, the primary Zeta race, the Zeta mind, and the other book, Alien Interaction, is all about moving from one frequency to the other. And when you learn how to do that, then what happens is you are in control of your contact. They know that you are in control of your contact. They can then come to you and they know that it will be a controlled contact session. That's why heterodyning is really, at this point, the only way to contact extraterrestrials safely and properly under full control.
Just want to go back to this.
Michael says, if they view animals as equals, why are they dismissive of ultra-terrestrials? Because they don't see animals as ultra-terrestrials. Connor specifically was talking about things like the fae and fairies and those being astral type consciousness.
How would you describe them? As we understand them, and maybe we've got the wrong definition of what's being spoken about, but we understand those kind of concepts of entities as residing within the astral. The astral is a collection of
the fabric.
Yeah, of all aspects of humanity, thoughts. It's like an energetic representation of the physical. Any dream you've ever had is in the astral. Every thought you've ever had is in the astral. This conversation we're having is in the astral. It's there, it exists. And so the ET, they recognize that these are, I don't know, energetic copies, energetic creations, that they're not independent, sentient consciousness beings as we understand them.
Or they can be. This is the
thing.
They
can develop that way. Yeah, absolutely.
That's another big conversation.
That's a huge conversation, but yeah.
Okay. So they're connected to the human collective consciousness ultimately, is that it? So that's why they focus on the human rather than the other.
Yeah, well, the question is, and nobody can answer this generally. If you're on another planet, do they have fairies?
I suppose I'm just thinking of an analogy. I suppose, like, things like fairies and gnomes and all of that in the astral, there could be described as the equivalent of the phenomena of humans.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
the
exactly
astral
what
is the phenomenon of the human race.
Like,
for sure.
I always maybe saw it as the phenomenon of Gaia, like the planet, maybe. Like these seem like
and the planet.
Yeah.
Because without the planet, the astral doesn't exist.
So yeah, because often I'd see them as maybe nature spirits, I guess, maybe is a term.
Yeah, and absolutely, and this is the thing. This planet, and as beautiful as it is, has the capacity to create phenomenon as well. And that's why quite often when people are doing a collective C5 type reach out to something, the planet could also be responding.
Yeah, that's what we talked about earlier.
Which is then now it creates another layer of complexity. Am I actually being contacted by the planet, or am I being contacted by ET? And until they land and actually come out and say, "Hey guys, how's it going? Got some pizza?" I mean, you just don't know.
I'd like some pizza today. Actually.
You like some pizza?
They could just drop
I'd like a
cappuccino. Pancakes. That's a joke.
All right. There's one question here that says, "I see orbs and then remember nothing. What's going on?" What do you think about that?
I'll let you talk.
Okay. Yeah. So Cyan sees orbs all the time,
but we did remember what happened after. And
she says, awesome. "Oh, look at the orbs." And I'll read you reading. Oh, that's interesting. Like this, totally ignoring the phenomenon.
I love orbs. I still get excited.
And then two days goes by and the orbs are still floating around, and then the third day, and I think, oh, there are, orbs. That's interesting.
You started paying attention.
I started paying attention. And then the next day, the beings were walking around the house, and those beings had sent their technology, the orbs, to monitor us to see what our reaction was to them. And because I basically just ignored them, they were quite happy to then come into the house after 3 days. I think that if I actually had to just keep acknowledging them all the time, oh, wow, there's an orb.
It's difficult not to acknowledge them when they're the size of a basketball.
Yeah, they were
outside
big
the
as a basketball
door window. Do you know what I mean? They're huge.
At night, just sitting outside the door.
Yeah. But why do people sometimes not have any clue what's happening after that?
Because once the orb comes in, the orb has the technology to provide the anesthetic.
Yeah.
And the anesthetic is the one that says, you won't remember this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so whether the technology is applied or not is up to them. So I've had an orb, physical orb, sitting on the floor and stayed there for at least 2 or 3 minutes. I could walk around it, I could look at it, I could do whatever I want. And it never applied any technology to me because they knew that I wasn't going to try to touch it.
Yeah.
They knew that I was quite happy just to observe it. So, I mean, it is nice to want to interact with this stuff. They'll generally let you look at stuff as long as they know that you're just going to observe it and not pull your iPhone out or whatever and start trying to take photos and go live streaming and look, guys, I've got this. If you do that, they're just going to go, no, I'm not doing it. Because why? Because there's been no disclosure yet from this side, which is humanity, and there's been absolutely minimal disclosure from their side as well. And they're not going to start giving out evidence in a way that everyone goes, you know what, 100% I believe this video on YouTube.
Yeah. Because
it's not going to happen. Not yet. It will happen. Yeah. When that big mothership comes across, like Independence Day, and the Anunnaki turn up, that'll be. Actually, Connor, you had a question about that, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very curious. Let's just say the ETs do decide to finally have open contact on land, I mean, and there seems to be all the various races that are interacting with us. So, which race would land first is what I'm curious. Like the Zetas seem to be doing a lot of the work, but
man, I reckon they'll all just turn up at the same time, eh?
Oh, really?
No, I'm joking. So, look, thinking about what's the possibility of actually a physical race turning up, I'd have to suggest that the safest non-influenced technological race, which means that the ability for the technology to affect us would be absolutely minimal, would be the Anunnaki. They created all that, they got the design for all the pyramids, that the pyramids are all the landing platforms for the Anunnaki. Those pyramids actually generate the landing signals, these sorts of things, the beacons. The Anunnaki's technology doesn't affect humans the way that the Zetas does. The Anunnaki, just because they're 8 or 10 feet tall also, but they're also quite human looking. So terrifying, but not as terrifying as 7-foot Zetas. So
is there something different about their vibration too that's more compatible to human tissue? Like they don't affect us with their vibration. Like we wouldn't damage with radiation.
Well, they lived among humanity back in the early days.
For a very, very long time, How many Anunnaki are currently on Earth? 3.
There's always 3.
Always 3.
When they left 3 behind.
Is that why we have some of these rumors of uncovered like giant skeletons and such in archaeology?
I think
or is that all bunk?
Archaeologists, there we go. Have you ever seen an Anunnaki?
No, I've never dug one up. I've dug up lots of dead Romans, but medieval London people. No, the thing is, you see these reports and images on the internet about what's a skeleton and what isn't. I don't know. I just don't know whether I trust what I see, to be honest.
No. You see, back in the past, before technology, if you saw something, you saw it. Or if a photograph was taken with a little camera, that was it. It was done. It was it. You saw it. These days, you all know yourselves. Somebody puts something up, and the first thing you go is this photoshopped? Did the person apply some filters to this?
Yeah.
There's this fabric of doubt straight away when it's credible. And so that never happened in the past. If somebody showed me a picture of a craft 25 years ago or 30, I'd go, wow, that is a craft. Have you seen one? Yes, I have seen craft on photos.
Now you're like digging out the forensic photographic app on the computer. You're trying to dissect it. Is it, it's just like, oh God, just land. Just put it down on the ground and then we know it's there.
No, they won't. And for craftlands, people will go, "Oh, that's to do with chemtrails."
Yeah. But for the people that it lands for, it's their evidence. And I think that comes back to disclosure, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The Zeta have said that they weren't prepared to disclose to a single body, single organization, single government.
Yeah.
They've disclosed to their own, the people that have had the experiences. That's their disclosure. Disclosure's already happened worldwide.
Yeah.
To individuals.
Yeah.
And those individuals who've had that proper evidence, they're not waiting for anyone else.
You can't convince anybody that's had contact that it didn't happen. It doesn't matter how many hours you sit there for.
Yeah.
And we would never even bother because we'd know ourselves. You could spend the rest of your life trying to convince me I haven't had craftland, and I'd be going, I just don't care what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's just, and I have people message me constantly, scientists or whatever, saying things like, "Oh, that didn't happen. That was this," because they see it from their perspective, and I think, well, I'll just wait for that person to have their own experience and then watch them shift over.
Yeah, watch the conversation.
Watch the conversation.
Yeah. And that has happened.
Yeah.
Okay.
So where do you think this is all going? Speaking of who's going to be the first one to land, is that where things are heading, or where do you see this slow individual disclosure going in the future?
I've never seen a time where there was so much information out there and so much being disclosed. And if this doesn't ultimately end up in disclosure at some point very soon, and I don't mean tomorrow, I would be absolutely surprised. So that's where I see it going. But the thing is, and I keep saying this, we've got to, as a society, get past the conversation about the phenomenon. You look on all the social media, everyone's arguing about what's this, what's that. It's more about, we're just talking about the headlights of a car. That's all it is. Do the headlights exist? Do they not exist? What lights? How big the lights? How small? What intensity? No, forget about that. What's behind it? And then I noticed today, I was looking on social media, and some people are now starting to discuss, okay, well, if it's a phenomenon, what's behind the phenomenon? And I thought,
finally.
Now we're finally getting there. That's okay. The Zetas had said, look, people need to be able to sort of digest all this information and come to a place where they understand that it's just a phenomenon, and the phenomenon's associated with technology or beings. And then, of course, there's a lot of questions now that once disclosure's been done by humans, the questions around that are going to be fairly significant questions. Control, society, political structures, religious beliefs.
Our science, we need to establish the consciousness system that we're in. That's the big thing. That's because we're still stuck in material science, and so the phenomenon and the way ET interacts with us, it just kind of constantly shows to us that we live in a consciousness-based reality. That's a big shift. It comes along with disclosure. Yeah.
Overlander says, do any non-human intelligence ever utilize animals as a host to spend times among humans unseen? I've not any information about that, but I've got this.
I do.
This joking. It's a joking theory when I say this. I think cats may be part of extraterrestrial races because they just seem to do whatever they want and they're always so relaxed.
I did ask.
You did ask. Okay.
That. Yeah, I did. See? You can tell he's not part of the conversation. Yeah. Yes, I did ask about the beings from Sirius A, so the avians and the felines. That those were specifically the two, and apparently, yes, they do incarnate into Earth animals for an Earth animal experience.
Well, I've just learned something. Well done.
I told you we should write this stuff down. And there's another question. We just got catching up on a few questions, seeing as we can. We've not been able to
Since we can see the screen, yeah.
What was Data saying? Since most of humans are not able to educate our vibrations,
potentially,
would technology be able to interface our brains to allow us to connect to different races and dimensions? That's a good question.
Look, yes, absolutely, but ask yourself a question. If you're using a substance to create contact. What does it do to your body while you're using the substance to create the contact? Will a being want to contact you properly and permanently if you always have to do something, take a substance, apply technology, whatever, and they know that?
Yeah.
And then that's not a natural point of contact. It's an assisted point of contact.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know about anyone else, but I would prefer that a person came to me in stillness rather than assisted by technology, because I would say to myself, the primary question would be, what is the potential for this person's consciousness to collapse on them because they haven't made the jump by themselves?
Jump in frequency.
Whereas if they made the jump in frequency to a race, what is the capacity of that person to be able to control the journey, control the contact? And this is what's classed as strength of mind. The Zetas call this strength of mind. What is your capacity to hold contact with a being? They have to hold contact with you. You have to be able to do that with them as well.
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
All righty.
Quarter past
Guys,
the hour.
it's quarter past.
Oh,
one more question. What's the difference between Sirius A and B as far as beings? Well, A are more terrestrial, land-based, and B is aquatic, fish type, dolphin.
You've actually seen one of them, haven't you?
I have seen a person actually shift to an aquatic entity. Couldn't believe it when I saw it happen. It was astounding to see it. Their eyes, just amazing. Okay.
I remember you telling me about that.
That's all.
It's a long time ago. Okay.
All right. Well, guys, if we froze a lot and you didn't hear what we're saying, we're sorry. Well, we'll go through and try and edit the video and see what we can pick out of it.
Hopefully it works out okay.
Thanks, guys, for everybody coming along. Thank you to everybody there. People, please subscribe to the Zeta Connection on YouTube.
Yeah, and the website address, zetaconnection.com, is it's pretty much that. Or you can see it in the show information for the people that came on later.
Yeah, and thank you to our mods.
Yes, always. Thank you. And again, thank you for putting up with our internet connection today, which hopefully won't be as bad next time.
We have no idea. That's fine.
Okay, we're going to do the short and sudden abrupt ending.
Yeah, it's going to be
apologies for that.
Thanks.
But we'll see you all again soon, and have a good week.
See you later.
Thank you, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Cheers, guys.